They're the best poker players in the world. And in the next 30 minutes, they'll help you become a better player. Led by the professor, Howard Lederer, FullTiltPoker.net has created an exclusive classroom to teach the strategies, techniques, and nuance that separate poker winners from losers. Joining Howard in studio today will be champion poker players Annie Duke, Ted Forrest, Eric Seidel, Robert Williamson III, Jennifer Harmon, Phil Hellmuth, and Antonio Esfandiari. It's a rare opportunity to learn from the best. FullTiltPoker.net presents Learn from the Pros.
Still have a few questions about the world of poker? We'll answer them over the next half hour as FullTiltPoker.net presents Learn from the Pros. He is the pro, one of the best in the entire world, the professor, Howard Lederer. I am Chris Rose, and we're kind of in the midst of our 26-week crash course on poker. So am I ready to fill out the blue book and take my final exam with the rest of the people out there?
I think you're getting there. You know, there's a lot to know about the game, but we've certainly thrown out some good topics already.
All right, what about midterm? Can I take the midterm and pass?
I think you're just about ready, yeah.
Okay, well, today's topic should certainly help, without a doubt. Time right now to focus on heads-up play. All right, a couple cool things about heads-up play. Of course, you can log on to FullTiltPoker.net and play that way, but if you're in tournament action, you can smell that money, Howard Lederer.
Absolutely, and anytime you're playing in a tournament, the largest difference in prize money is between first and second place. So if you're down to heads up, you might as well come away a winner.
And you know what? One aspect of this, how often have you told me you got to change gears, be a chameleon out there, no more so than in heads-up play, where I guess you have to expand. You have to play a little bit looser?
Well, if you're going to win playing heads up, this is the biggest gear change, because you're putting in either a small or a big blind every hand, and if you're waiting around for good hands, you're just going to get anteed out.
All right, let's show you an example. Ted Ford's taken on Christy Gazes recently. And a couple of hands, if it was six-way action, you know, you'd throw them away.
Absolutely, but you know, you can't wait around for those hands. You have to play more hands. You have to play looser. We have Christy Gazes limping in on the button here with 9-3 suited. Ted, of course, checks his option with the 9-deuce. Flop completely misses Ted, but he knows there's a good chance it missed Christy. He bets, but you know, Christy's not buying it. She's flop bottom pair. That's not a bad flop, particularly for a hand like Queen 3. She calls. The turn pairs tens. This couldn't have helped Ted's hand. He either had her beat, or she now still has the best hand. He checks, and she's going to make sure that he's not going to draw out against her. She bets. He has to fold.
All right, let's move on. What is the difference between playing looser and playing more aggressively?
Well, looser just means you're playing more hands. But you have to play those hands more aggressively because you're heads up. And when you're heads up, much better chance that your opponent's also missed. So you need to take, when you do have a good hand or even a marginal hand, you have to play it more aggressively than you would have in a multi-way situation.
All right, well, Howard actually brought this clip in himself, taking on Daniel Negreanu.
Yep, well, here's a heads-up match that I had with Daniel recently. And here we both have very good hands, very good starting hands, particularly for heads-up. Daniel makes a small raise on the button. And I'm going to play these two sevens very aggressively, particularly in a heads-up situation. I re-raise. Daniel probably isn't thinking about folding here. He's probably thinking about whether to raise me back or not. But he decides to just call. And now the flop comes, you know, bad for both of us. But, you know, certainly bad for me in that I'm out of position and I only have two sevens. But I'm not going to slow down here. I've represented a big hand. I'm gonna bet out here, hoping he's going to lay down.
Well, let's hear what Daniel is thinking.
I'm going to take a wild guess. My first instinct says you have ace-queen. Second instinct says you have ace-jack. I can't beat either. Time to go.
Well, you know, Daniel made the right decision there. He may not have put me on the right hand, but I played that hand very aggressively. I represented an ace. And, you know, this is one of those situations, once you take the lead on the pot, you're pushing the action and you have a pretty decent hand. You need to continue to push that action until your opponent really tells you you're beat. If Daniel had raised me there, he would have gotten me to fold.
All right, finally, something to keep in mind when you're playing heads up. Math says you're going to miss the flop, and your opponent's probably going to miss the flop. It happens. Let's show it. Daniel Negreanu again in the hockey jersey taking on Freddie Deeb.
This is a nice example that's going to show us that you can't always just wait for a pair. Ace high can be good enough, particularly when you're playing heads up. So Freddie checks his option here after Daniel limps in on the button. And they both flop inside straight draws. Actually, if it comes a 5 here, it would be total disaster for Daniel. But Freddie checks to him, and Daniel makes a nice standard bet with an inside straight draw and an ace high, probably figuring his hand is good. And now Freddie raises, representing some kind of pretty good pair, a 10 or something. But when you're playing heads up, sometimes you just have to go with your instincts. And Daniel's instinct here was that his ace high was good, and he's going to play this hand very consistently in that he's going to just play it like his ace high is good. Now, 4th Street, the board pairs certainly couldn't have helped Freddie's hand. If Freddie had a 10, he already had him beat. Freddie bets about 20,000 here. And, you know, Daniel doesn't think too long about this. He's still, you know, kind of maybe putting Freddie on a hand like a 5-3 or a 6-3, and he calls pretty quickly. And now the board pairs, and this is a nice example of kind of knowing that there's a good chance your hand's good. There's no need to bet anymore. Right. Freddie checks. Daniel just says, you know, I'll check. I think my ace high is good, and he turns it up and he wins the pot. No need to risk more chips. If he's beat there and he bets, he's definitely getting called, and he just loses more.
So change your attitude a little bit and also remain patient. It just sounds like those are two keys.
And actually what I love about heads-up play is you get to focus in on one guy. It's a game of psychology, and it's a game of reading.
All right, well, Howard and I are going to play a game of heads-up during the break. We're back with more. Still to come, what makes Phil Hellmuth react like this?
I'm lying down on the ground going, you've got to be kidding me.
Phil, come home. We'll show you. And quick, grab a deck of cards. The magician is teaching an amazing new trick.
Do you want to know how to shuffle a deck with only one hand?
But up next, more on heads-up play from the people who know. Poker champions Duke, Seidel, Forrest, and Williamson share their insights when Learn from the Pros returns.
Time for a poker pop quiz.
Which of these hands will win at least 50% of the time against two random cards? Is it A, pocket fours, B, queen 5 offsuit, C, ace 5 offsuit, or D, 9-10 of spades? The answer when we come back.
FullTiltPoker.net presents Learn from the Pros. Brought to you by FullTiltPoker.net. Learn, chat, and play with the pros. FullTiltPoker.net presents Learn from the Pros.
Before the break, we asked you which of these hands will win at least 50% of the time against two random cards. A, pocket fours, B, queen 5 offsuit, C, ace 5 offsuit, or D, 9-10 of spades. The correct answer is all of the above, showing that you need to play a lot more starting hands when you're heads up. All right, the best way to really learn from the pros, just sit around the table, chat with them for a few minutes. That's what we will continue to do here on FSN. Of course, the Professor Howard Lederer is hanging out, and if you're not privy to the Lederer family tree, let us fill it in a little bit. Sister Annie Duke sitting next to you. Annie, good to see you, superstar. What's up? No, hey, I'm sorry. If you're on Letterman a couple of times, you're superstar. Okay, you can continue laughing about that. We'll move on. Just catch your breath in a second. Sitting to your left, Ted Forrest, never on Letterman, but you do have 5 bracelets.
How are you, Chris?
I'll train him.
It's good enough. It's good. Annie's still laughing over there. Eric Siddell joining us, won his 7th bracelet this year. How are you?
Doing great.
Good.
Nice to be here.
And this guy, well, he looks like he should be hosting his own late-night talk show. Robert Williamson III also has a bracelet. And Natalie Cladd, might I add. You've got, like, the verticals, you got the horizontals, you got the flowery tie working.
Just found this in the closet.
You look sharp. You look sharp. All right, today's topic, heads-up play. Now, Ted, what goes into making a great heads-up player?
You have to realize you're going to have the best hand half the time, and so is your opponent. So the person that's going to be able to pick up most of those pots where not too much of either of you has too much, where you both have nothing, the person that can pick up most of those pots has a big advantage.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in intimidation when you're playing heads up. I really like to play just about every hand and kind of try and find that bet that's going to force my opponent to either give up or commit a big part of his stack to play the hand. And I think you can just keep putting pressure and pressure. And if you can make a player, you know, it's one thing to kind of try and win those nothing hands, but if you can kind of force a guy to really commit a lot of chips to try and win one of those hands, and then you have a good hand that hand, that's how you bust people.
Yeah, it's a lot about, you know, committing small bets to try to pick up the dead money that can get you like a big bet later. So I think that one thing that amateurs don't do very well at heads up is the chopping. And what I see a lot is that either they're like, I don't know what to do, I'm just going to go all in, which is laying a huge price, or they're just completely passive and they're checking everything down. And what the pros understand is that you can make a lot of money just chopping the blinds and just picking up the blinds and picking up those small pots where your opponent doesn't hit anything, and making them finally just get really frustrated and say, now I'm going to make a stand. And, you know, if you don't have anything when they decide to do that, you've risked, you know, a little tiny bit of chips. If you do, you get all their chips at once. So
the reason why I like to do that, chopping away, is I feel like if I chop, 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 and I slowly build my stack, if I do play a big pot with them and say we're 60-40 or 50-50 hand, I can afford to play that pot easier because now I've got them covered.
Right.
I'm always trying to stay with more chips than them, so if I make a mistake, or if I'm a small favorite or a small dog, I can fade those coin tosses. And I think that's another big advantage to chopping away, is winning. I like to leave no dead money on the table. I try to do kind of what Howard said. I try to find what the breaking point is and either make them make a major decision to force me off my hand, or let it go and just try to find that breaking point.
You know, Eric, in tournament play, you're down to heads-up action. You might, as a young poker player, say, you know what, second place, that's not bad. I can tell you, I mean, that's the worst thing you can say at a table like this. Do we undervalue the difference between a second and a first in this?
There's a huge difference between first and second, as I well know.